Hello everyone. I want to show you one of the most useful screens of Nexus for me, as the person installing the software on your system, and that is the device map. This screen is highly visual, and what you can see here is a representation of the hardware that the software can see. Down here, we have the COM ports of the system. We have 1 through 8, with 5 is missing right now. And we have the devices connected to the port horizontally. So on COM port 1, for example, it's got 2 devices connected to it, 2 Eurotherm controllers. In fact, what you'll notice is that all the devices on the port are of a single type, and that's important for the software. So here we have, in address 1, we've got the substrate controller for the Eurotherm controller. And here on address 2, on that COM port, we have the gallium controller, and so on and so forth. So they're all listed and connected. Now, there's 3 really useful features on this screen that I just want to go through briefly, and they really help with setting up your system. The first one is a port scanner. So it looks for COM ports on the system, and it works almost instantaneously. It just identifies and creates ports on the system. So if I run that, you see it's found the missing COM port 5 that was not in. And it creates a default port for me with all the standard values that you can use. You see it's got no devices on this port at the moment, but the device type is a Eurotherm. And this is the only parameter you need to change really when setting up a port, as long as you've used the standard values in the hardware. And once that's done, so each port is set up with the devices that are on the port, the type, I can then scan for devices, and that's the second super useful feature. So what the software is going to do is it's going to look for all the devices starting at address 0, and it's going to just ask, are you there, and wait for a response from the device. And if it finds a device, it's going to add it to the screen. So here we have find devices. So I'm going to click that, and it runs a progress bar. Now this takes about a minute to run through. And you can see, since it starts at the lowest numbers, it's already found devices 2 and 3 added onto here that weren't present, and it found a device here, device 1 on this port that it's found, and it's going now. It's probably somewhere around 70 on the addresses, and it's going to go all the way up to 255. Now, since I don't need to scan that high, I see that I found all the devices I want. I'm going to cancel it at this point. It would just run all the way through. But now we've found some devices on the system, and we have some devices that are free. So these 2, they've just been found, they're free. And this one has been found and it's free. It's not used by anything. And then the final thing that we want to do, and this is already great, like just getting here in that painless way of setting up and identifying the system without having to type everything out, figure everything out, it's such a good feature for setting up. And then the final feature, the third feature, is really the other half of the system. And this one is, it's called Generate Loops. And what this feature does is you click on it and it gives you the ability to select all of the loops that are on the system based on the type of system. So this one is a group 3 arsenide system. And what's selected at the moment are the current loops. So the loops that are present on the system. So here in the heaters section, I've got a substrate heater. It's called sub. You can basically substrate, sub, manipulator, and sample. They would all be sort of, aliases for the same heater, the one that in the growth chamber that you're using to grow samples. So I've selected the one sub because I prefer the name. And then I've got the group 3s, the cells. So I've got one of each of the group 3s on this system. This system has got an arsenic cell and a bismuth cell. So it doesn't have a cracker. But you can also select, a cracker and configure it like this. You can also select the other group 5s. And then you can select the dopants, which I've selected silicon and beryllium for this system. And then gauges. So this system only has a single gauge. And again, these aliases down here, you can have your flux gauge, the beam flux monitor, or a monitoring ion gauge. And it's really the name that you like that you select. So you can also select, if you had them, the other ion gauges in the system. And finally, the services in the system. And so this is really quick, just like what is present on the system. And when you click select here, it's going to look at creating for you default loops. So you don't have to type anything. It just goes in and finds the default setting that has been used on like every other MBE system that the software has ever been installed on. So it should be okay for yours. And it's going to create that. And it creates a file for you with all the loop configuration on just a single click. And that's why this is super useful. So I'm not going to run it now because I've already set that up. But that is then set up. And what you would have is you have all the loops then created in the software. And the final thing you need to do, the one final thing, is to connect the loops to the devices. So not that one. If you click here, you can look at, so this device is owned by the substrate loop, and it's its control device. Okay, you can have control and shutters basically, and here we could set it to anything, right? So we could give this device to another loop if we wanted to, and the same is true for the shutters. So if you look in here, I'm currently using the trips of an ion gauge controller as a shutter controller, because this particular system didn't have its own shutter controller. So we had 7 trips, we had 7 shutters, so it worked out really nicely. And here we've so the digital output 1, which can be set, is attached to the gallium shutter. And all you have to do is select from the list what the hardware is connected to, and then you save it, and that is the software fully configured at that point. So easy. I hope you really liked this video.